It's fair to say now that the Alberta hospital system is in full-blown crisis. We're seeing canceled surgeries. We're seeing increased deaths. ICUs are overflowing. It is a disaster. And I think I'm not going out on a limb. It is not being overly dramatic to say that Premier Jason Kenney has blood on his hands. And that raises the question of the extent to which politics, naked political calculations, have figured in the inaction by the provincial government. And I'm going to talk to Professor Duane Bratt, who's a political scientist at Mount Royal University, about that. So welcome to the interview, Duane.
Good afternoon, Markham.
Look, this is I can't remember a crisis as severe in Alberta. Give me your take on it.
And I would agree with that. I mean, the Dr. Yao, the head of Alberta Health Services, and we've been seeing her a lot more over the last couple of weeks, has said this is the biggest crisis to hit the Alberta health system in the province's history. They brought in a surge capacity to increase ICU beds that involved deploying resources from different areas, including, children's hospitals. And they're now, and if they hadn't done that, the ICUs would already be overwhelmed. They are begging for help from other provinces to take patients, to send doctors, to send nurses. There has been 4 waves. The 4th wave has been by far the worst of these, and it had been growing and had been growing, and we only saw real government action just a couple days ago.
And it wasn't exactly robust action either. But I want you to respond to my earlier comment. Does Jason Kenney have blood on his hands?
That's a really strong phrase. It's a phrase I have not used, but it's an inescapable conclusion to make. Whether you call it a medical malpractice, whether you call it blood on your hands, there are people who have died needlessly. People are going to die in any province, no matter how much money you put into the healthcare system. But this was deliberate inaction for political purposes, and that has led to a spike in deaths. We're dealing with, as someone pointed this out, a Humboldt bus crash every day. And that's only the direct COVID deaths. That isn't about people who are going to have long-term health issues because of COVID, or about those who have missed surgeries or other medical treatments that are going to lead to regular deaths that are non-COVID related, or children. I mean, the fact that they're shutting down operating capacity for babies is atrocious. And so I don't think blood on the hands is too strong today. This has been 19 months.
Let's talk about Richard Godfrey, who's the MLA for Fish Creek in Calgary. He tweeted on Wednesday that he has been begging inside the government, begging for 30 days for the government to intervene, to bring in stricter measures because people were going to be sick and they were going to die, and he was ignored. He's so frustrated that he took to Twitter to express his despair, almost, as that's the way you read his tweets. What's your take on that?
Richard is exactly right. And it's refreshing to actually have a guy like Richard Godfrey speak out, because previously the only people who have spoken out from the UCP caucus are those who have been opposed to any restrictions whatsoever. And 30 days is a generous assessment, because the data, they knew in late July that the modeling from Britain wasn't applying to Alberta. And they knew by early August that things were going sideways, that the warnings were coming. The fact that Hinshaw in the second week of August had to reverse her previous decision around testing, tracing, and isolation, we've known for a month before last Wednesday's action. And they delayed and they delayed. And then when they did act, they brought in the most complicated, convoluted system that looked like it was scratched out on a napkin. And so, to Richard's credit, he is identifying this. He was inside the room making those arguments, and he was ignored. And then you have to ask, why did they act so late? Why did they bring in such a complicated system? And the only explanation is around the political ideology of Jason Kenney and many members of his government and the political fortunes of the United Conservative Party.
Well, let's talk about political fortunes of a related party, and that's Conservative Party of Canada. Of course, leader Aaron O'Toole has praised Jason Kenney and the UCP response in Alberta. Just earlier this week, he was praising it. And the question has been asked, and I know we don't have a smoking gun, Duane, but the question has been asked, did Jason Kenney do what he did in part to not provide any embarrassment to CPC, to the CPC campaign? And so what's your take on that?
I think there is growing evidence, and we'll find out more on Tuesday, that a deal was struck to keep Kenney away during the federal election, just as they kept Doug Ford away. I mean, Doug Ford even prorogued the legislature. He took a holiday. I don't begrudge Jason Kenney from having taken a holiday. I think he should take more holidays. The man is a workaholic. That is not good for anybody, but it was the timing of it. And the fact that when he went away in late August, the entire government was in paralysis. Nobody could act in the absence of the premier. The health minister couldn't, the chief medical officer of health. We had to wait for him to return before we got a mask mandate on September 3rd. Then he went radio silent again. And I am sure, and we're hearing off the record, we may hear on the record soon, that the deal was don't speak out until Tuesday. The fact that he spoke Wednesday shows how dire the health situation was. That Dr. Yo must have convinced him, Premier, we can't wait till Tuesday. We can't wait till Saturday. We can't wait till Friday. If we do not take immediate action, the health system will collapse. And so that is why I think he came forward on Wednesday. And Aaron O'Toole's campaign over the last week or so had stalled. He was already, looks like he was not going to become prime minister. I mean, there's still a chance. But I think Kenney's announcement on Wednesday cut him off at the knees. Absolutely, because the next morning, both Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh made the direct links between Aaron O'Toole and Jason Kenney. There's been local candidates in Alberta who have been making those links as well. And then Aaron O'Toole has this disastrous press conference in St. John, New Brunswick, where he is asked repeatedly, over and over again, about Jason Kenney, and he acts like he's never heard of the guy. It is one thing to praise Jason Kenney's performance during the first wave. I have done that. Kenney handled the first wave better, I would say, than any other province in the country. But you can't say that now. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that the fourth wave is hitting Alberta harder than anywhere else in the country. And it's boxed O'Toole in because Jason Kenney endorsed Aaron O'Toole for the leadership. He put his organizational weight behind O'Toole, which was not insignificant. So watch Tuesday. If Aaron O'Toole does not become prime minister, do members of his team on the record go after Jason Kenney?
Okay, there's two deals I want to talk about here, Duane. The first one you've described very well, where Jason Kenney stays out of the limelight. I mean, last election, 2019, he was in Ontario campaigning for the CPC.
He was much more popular in 2019 than he is in 2021.
Fair enough. But he was basically invisible during this campaign. But then there's the second deal that's, there are rumors of a second deal where they didn't move on COVID-19 policy in Alberta for exactly the same reason, because of the blowback that would occur on the federal campaign.
No, I don't believe that part. I think the decision around waiting was around Kenney's political ideology and the fortunes of the United Conservative Party. They bet everything. Kenney has been started to slide pre-COVID. COVID continued that slide. Other premiers have been up and down in popularity over COVID, like Doug Ford. Kenney, it's just been a straight line down. So this was the Hail Mary pass. He banked everything on opening faster than every other province and opening for good. So the slogan wasn't just open for summer, it was open forever. And How do you reverse that? How do you acknowledge that everything you banked on to increase the economic fortunes, societal fortunes, and especially the political fortunes of the United Conservative Party, you bet wrongly. So he's like sitting at the poker table. He's lost the hand. You know, he's thrown every dollar in, he's put his rings in, he's put his watch in, he's put his pants and shirt in, he's lost, and he's still trying to play the game. And that's, I think, a better explanation about why he didn't act. And it explains why, despite BC, Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba bringing in a vaccine mandate, he refused to do so on September 3rd. He said $100 incentive program, that will get people vaccinated. We're not going to mandate it. That's not where we do things in Alberta. Wednesday, he brings in something called a restrictions exemption program, which sounds an awful lot like a vaccine mandate. He's bringing in a printable proof of vaccination card, which sounds an awful lot like a vaccine passport, but they won't use those terms because you've got clip after clip after clip of Kenney saying, I will never do that. And so I don't think it's the federal politics that explains the delayed response. It is the personal and political provincial politics that explains it.
Well, Duane, thank you very much for your insights. We are both in agreement. And I want to say this again, because given the dire situation in Alberta, I think it's fair to say there is blood on Jason Kenney's hands. Thank you, Duane.
Thanks, Markham.